Welcome to the station crew. Enjoy your stay.
Hello everyone. Today I will be showing you how to make many exotic gases that you can find in the Funky Station server, such as Helium, BZ, Nitrium and Pluoxium. There will be no cut in this video so that you can see the whole process without any interruption. I've placed debug generators to keep the power on while I can explain how we can make those gases. Usually it will be your colleague who will be working on the power while you are working in that mode. Since we're working in that mode, I will still be setting up Distro. I also highly encourage you to check on the guidebook, which contains a lot of information on how to make the gases I'll be producing in this video. Now I'll be setting up West. It's very quick on this station. There we go. So the first thing we want to do is prepare the plasma burn chamber so we can produce tritium, which is one of the most important gases for us because it is used in many recipes. So tritium is fairly easy to understand how to make. You basically need a mix of plasma and oxygen, where the plasma content, the plasma amount should not exceed 1% of the mix. So let's set up the chamber first. I will be placing in the middle an injector which will eject our gas mix. I'm placing it in the middle so that it distributes evenly the gas in the room. Then on each tile I will be using scrubber to make sure the tritium gets scrubbed as fast as possible so it doesn't burn inside the chamber. Because tritium will burn with oxygen to make more heat. We want to avoid that as much as possible. So I'm connecting all the scrubber together. And I will also be placing a radiator in the middle, which I will explain the reason later. So let's not forget to link all our scrubber with our multi-tool, which will then connect to the air alarm that we will be building back in the room. I'm also putting a radiator outside where the tritium will be scrubbed so that it doesn't come out as hot as it is inside the chamber. Also placing a vent which we will use to get rid of the unwanted gases that we scrubbed. So this is a filter that will allow us to only retrieve the tritium, because during the process it will make water vapor which we don't want in our system. For the burn mix, as I said before, we will want 99% of oxygen and 1% of plasma. We will fill the room with this first. And let's not forget to link our scrubber to the alarm. For the settings, I'm scrubbing everything but oxygen and plasma. I'm also adjusting the sensors so that it only shows a warning when the plasma gets close to or above 1%. During this process, I'm monitoring the alarm. I don't want the pressure to go too high, so I'm trying to aim to around 1300 kPa. So right now it's a perfect amount. We will be able to start burning the chamber now. Why we don't want to overpressurize a room with 99% oxygen is we want to be able to add more plasma once the mix is at a 99% ratio, because plasma doesn't hit a 99% oxygen when making tritium. It's just that we don't want to go it over 1%. So the chamber is slowly heating up. Now we can set our plasma amount to 70% and a low pressure. But we won't activate it until the chamber stops burning. We want that heat to build up before. While it's cooking, we'll be preparing the second chamber, which we will be using for Nitrium production. Cold station is very nice for atmospheric because of the two already pre-built chamber that it provides. So it will be very similar to the burn chamber, except for the settings on the scrubbers. Again, we are placing a radiator, which we will link to the other radiator of the barrier chamber. I'll explain it a bit later. Same as tritium, we will want the output to get cooled with the radiator. It's not mandatory for this chamber, but it's a bit neater. I'm preparing to add the connector for the gas that we will put inside the radiator, but for now it's still empty. Always to remember wearing your hat, it's very important. So now for the settings on the scrubber, we will want to scrub everything. No, sorry, just Nitrium, nothing else. Okay, so the burn chamber is still heating up. Oh, well, now it comes to a halt. So I'm checking if the plasma is at a very low amount, which is. So now we are ready to turn on the mixer to add more gases inside. And as you see in the air alarm, the amount of oxygen with those settings will barely change. So we will have a very stable burn, which will provide a lot of tritium for the whole process. So for the Nitrium, we want to mix 3 gases, so I will be using 2 mixers and 3 gas filters. The 3 gases are as follow. We want a mix of 50-50 tritium and nitrium. No, sorry, tritium and nitrogen, and 5% BZ. So the alarm told me that it was in a dangerous amount of plasma, so I reduced the pressure a bit. So the plasma has more time to get consumed before more is injected. So I prefer to place my mixer first so that it's easier to lay out the pipe after. So right now this is my Nitrium output. I will set up a heat pump to cool down the Nitrium that comes out of the chamber. I am not mixing it with all of our gases in the highway because Nitrium will react badly with oxygen, so we want to keep it in a separate pipe. What I'm calling the highway is basically the pipes that will contain all our Healium, Frezon, BZ and Pluoxium, so basically the main bus. So now we will prepare the BZ chamber. So the trick with BZ is that it's only happen at a very low pressure, and you want a mix of plasma and nitrous oxide to create BZ. So we will make a chamber for it because it allows for a lot more space for having a low pressure amount. Just a small chamber of 2x2 is enough. So this mixer will be mixing plasma and nitrous oxide. And the scrubber will be scrubbing everything back into the loop. I'm plugging the tritium output inside our highway. And now we need, we will start making Frezon. So Frezon is very simple. We need tritium, which we'll already have, oxygen and nitrogen. We just need it to be very cold for it to happen. For the mixer, for the BZ, you want around 66% plasma and the rest be nitrous oxide. And now I'm encasing the room. I won't activate the scrubber yet. I want to make sure that our pipes are full of Frezon first. So I'm not setting a lot of pressure on the mixer for the burn chamber because I want it to be hot enough before I increase the pressure. The hotter it is, the faster the plasma gets consumed and tritium is produced. So now we just need to cool the highway. And as you can see, tritium gets cooled very quickly. And we add a trace amount of oxygen and nitrogen to kickstart the Frezon production. Once Frezon is made, it will cool itself very quickly and the freezer won't be needed anymore. As you can see, Frezon is already made and the temperature is jumping significantly faster. As the temperature gets colder, the Frezon reaction will start producing more nitrogen, so at this point you will be able to turn off completely the nitrogen pump. Frezon production consumes 50 moles of oxygen per mole of tritium, so this is why we have a much higher amount of oxygen compared to the tritium. Now I'm starting to filter tritium and nitrogen for the Nitrium production. We're still missing BZ, which we will do very shortly. We want 5% of BZ and the rest is 50-50% of nitrogen and tritium. So now we have enough Frezon in the pipes that I feel confident enough to start the BZ production. You want to avoid as much as possible a low amount of Frezon in the pipe because you run the risk for it to get too hot to the point you won't be able to make Frezon unless you clear all the pipe content. Start over. So now we are starting to make BZ. And it's already building up a good amount of BZ in our filter. I usually aim for around 500 moles of BZ before I turn off the filter. So the idea of the radiator we've placed previously is that at some point our burn chamber will get high enough in temperature that the pressure will prevent us from injecting more gas inside. So what we want to do is cool this chamber. And what's a better way to do that than to use the Nitrium reaction, which is endothermic, to cool down the chamber. It will also allow us to produce Nitrium because it needs to be above 1500 kelvins to be made. So those two chambers are benefiting each other in a way. The injector inside the burn chamber will start to stop at around 9000 kPa pressure. So right now I'm monitoring and making sure that the Frezon is at it is not decreasing at least, which it currently isn't, so that's great. And I want to make also sure that the tritium is produced at a steady rate, because we need a lot of it for the Nitrium. So right now we have lots of Nitrium, nitrogen and BZ inside, so that's perfect. We just need to wait for it to heat up to 1500 Kelvin. We are getting close to it. So while it's cooking, we can start preparing the Pluoxium production. So Pluoxium is the last step for the gas mix we want to do, and is very easy to make. So all you need is a bit of uranium. So basically Pluoxium is a mix of 66% of carbon dioxide and the rest of oxygen. And with radiation surrounding it, it will make Pluoxium. You can, if you don't have uranium, you can replace uranium by 1% tritium. But because we do, I'll just use uranium for simplicity's sake. The result of the Pluoxium reaction will be sent back to the highway so that it will be at the same temperature as the rest of the other gas we're making. Usually you don't want to go below 150 Kelvin for Pluoxium production, but if you're using radiation and not tritium, you can bypass this threshold. So as you can see, it's already making Pluoxium at a decent rate. So let's check on our Nitrium. So we've passed the 1500 Kelvin, so it's making Nitrium. In fact, it's making so much Nitrium that the bunch hopper isn't able to keep up with the tritium production. So I will have later to cool down even more the bunch chamber and not just simply using the Nitrium reaction for it. So now we have about all the gases we need for the mix. The only thing that remains will be helium, which is already something we can do with our current setup. So for the Pluoxium Nitrium Helium mix, we want about 45% Nitrium and the rest Helium and 5% Pluoxium. I'm setting a low transfer rate so that the helium has time to cool before it goes inside the filter. Same for the Pluoxium. So I've turned off the BZ filter so that BZ can accumulate inside the pipes, which will react with the Frezon to make lots of helium. And as you can see, it's already making a lot. I'm replacing the volumetric pump with a gas pump because it's much faster for what we need. Basically, we want to pump first the Nitrium before activating the mixer, because if you don't place a pump in between, the Nitrium that comes in is still very hot, and the mixer will use that very hot Nitrium to mix it with the helium, which we want to avoid. So we use an in-between. If that makes sense. So now we can increase the injection of the burn mix. You can increase it up to, I think, 200. It will still work. It will make a lot of tritium if you are able to keep the chamber cool. I'm reducing the amount of oxygen we are putting inside because Frezon is still building up, so we don't need a tons of it. And it will eat less tritium that way. So I'm still concerned about the burn chamber not being able to keep running with our Nitrium cooling it. Usually the Nitrium is enough by itself to keep the chamber running forever, but right now it's not, so I will be helping it by using a radiator that I'll be placing in space to keep the burn chamber cooled. As you can see, it's 2000 Kelvin is very hot for a tritium chamber. You want to, if you really want to maximize the amount of tritium it produces, you want it to be around 1650 Kelvin. So we have a lot of Nitrium already, so I'm thinking of putting it inside a canister now. So 45% Nitrium and 5% Pluoxium. All of the gas are at the same temperature. I'm making sure that it is indeed the case, so 25 Kelvin each. I first activate the pump, then deactivate it so that it stays at a constant temperature. Then I turn on the mixer. And already we have a lot of pressure inside this canister. Actually, enough pressure to fill a tank fully. And as you can see, we are still below the 30 minutes into the shift, so now you have plenty of time to enjoy this gas mix and share it with others. So you could stop right there, but I will continue a bit so that I'm making sure the tritium chamber is actively producing a lot of tritium for any potential future needs. For this mix, I will put the pressure of my tank at 8, and with that we're able to vibrate, be very fast, and heal on our own. So I'll demonstrate the healing real quick. So I'm at a very critical amount of damage, but as you can see, the healing rate is very decent for something that doesn't need you to stop and make a do after. The idea behind this gas mix is that helium usually puts you to sleep at a high dosage, but the nitrium counteracts this effect, which prevents us from sleeping while also giving us a nice speed boost. We use Pluoxium instead of oxygen because nitrium with oxygen produce lots of hits and consumes nitrium in the process. So now I will be fixing the tritium chamber by adding a radiator in space. When using a radiator in space, you don't want the transfer rate to be at their maximum on the pump, because the radiator in space cools down the gas inside very quickly. So in fact it will be so fast at cooling the gas that the bench chamber can gets too cold actually. Also swapping the place of the radiator. And now the bench chamber is back on track. As you can see, it's still very hot, so I will be increasing the amount of transfer in the pump because of that. And as you can see, the oxygen amount has barely decreased with our current plasma oxygen mix. So it is a very stable bench chamber. I check from time to time the amount of gases inside any mix to make sure it still remains at the correct ratio that I'm aiming at. If it's not the case, I just adjust a bit the amount in the mixer. As you can see now, the tritium is getting produced much faster now, thanks to our small thanks to our radiator in space that is cooling actively the burn chamber. With this setup, you can easily fill any canister of the desired gas you'd like, as long as it's inside the highway. So you want helium? Just slap a filter on the highway and set it to helium as a filtering. You can also filter out the nitrogen for Vox's friends, because it will come out very cold, which will be greatly appreciated for them. They will be able to brace it at 2 kPa rate. So now we have a lots of tritium and nitrogen inside our Nitrium chamber. So I'm deciding to remove the radiator that was cooling the burn chamber, because I thought that it was plenty enough of tritium for the Nitrium to keep up with the burn chamber. And doing that massively speed up the amount of Nitrium that was being produced. So I'm doing one last injection inside our canister, and judging by the current amount, we should be fine for the rest of the entire shift. We could fill all the tanks that exist on the station, and it will barely reduce the pressure of our canister. So one thing I'd like to mention before I stop the video is when using oxygen tank, you want to be very careful and make sure they are fully empty before putting them inside the canister. Because sometimes when you empty them this way, there will be a trace amount of oxygen that will still remain inside. If this happens, and you put that tank inside the canister, well, you will see shortly what will happen, but you really want to avoid that. So I wasn't able to reproduce the trace amount of oxygen remaining inside, so I will be using an oxygen canister to demonstrates the idea of a low amount of oxygen remaining inside the tank. So usually it should look like this, with a very low amount of mole of oxygen, so you will think it's not much and you can still put it inside, but here's what will happen if you do that. Yeah, that's called a Maxcap and you've accidentally blew up yourself. So I hope this video was interesting to watch despite the fact it was unedited, and hopefully learn a few things about gases on Funky Station. See ya!